Askreddit asks people who have hired other people, what are some unexpected ways a candidate has disqualified themselves from, decreased their odds of getting a position they applied for?
On the inverse of this, I went into a job interview where the manager said, "Look, I don't really care. You are my 30th applicant in a week and everyone has failed the drug test. If you can pass the drug test, you are hired. I don't even care about anything else anymore." I passed. It was an awesome job and he was a great manager.
I was interviewing for a truck driver position and spontaneously, I asked how long the candidate has been driving for. Surprise! He didn't know how to.
On the plus side, no bad driving habits! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark!
From what I've seen on the 401, that doesn't sound like a deal breaker in Ontario.
I heard about a parent who took the child somewhere to fill out an application. While the kid was filling out the application, the parent struck up a conversation with the manager, saying how the kid is lazy, disrespectful, and never listens, and how they want this job to whip the kid into shape. After they leave, the manager tosses out the kid's application.
That's really awful. Why do people do shit like this?
Ugh, my mom loved to tell everyone that I was lazy, disrespectful and never listens. Except I really wasn't. She just liked using shame as punishment for minor transgressions. In a section of the application where we ask if they have a felony record, they answered yes. In the following field asking about details of said felony, they had put they had embezzled funds from their previous employer, then assaulted that employer, then assaulted arresting officers. While I admire the honesty, that's gonna be a no from me, dog.
They can't really lie about it though, right? Quick background check would reveal it anyway.
While I admire the honesty, that's gonna be a no from me, dog. Why do you pirates ask your dogs for advice?
I just remembered one more. I had a candidate bring his mother into an interview, as in actually trying to help him answer. I asked her to leave and then told him directly that she is harming his career. He was fresh out of undergraduate. But that's still pretty bad. Closing parenthesis dot.
That reminds me of an old Tumblr post. Interviewer: so, would you say you're an independent person? Me. Looks at mom. Nods. Me. I would say so, yes.
I once had a candidate bring up an illegal gambling habit as a way to show how good they were at working around rules and reading situations. I don't think the candidate was good at reading situations.
Situational awareness, check. Shoulda folded.
When I managed a retail store, it wasn't uncommon for people to bail on job interviews with last minute or no notice. But there was only ever one person who no-showed the interview and then called the next week asking if they got the job.
Yes, you did. You started yesterday, but you didn't show up, so you were fired. Dot.
I would like to see some academic paper behind that thought process.
Well, did they get it?
Had a guy who reluctantly told me he used to work at a sex shop. To try and save him from feeling weird, I told him that my wife has always found it fascinating and would love to work in one. His response: well, isn't she a fucking weirdo?
If I was the interviewer, I'd have to leave the room. I'd be laughing so hard. I hope there was no pause and he just said it without having to think. That would make it 20 times funnier.
Sounds like a jolly fellow.
Doing a text screen phone interview, and you could tell the guy was googling his heart out every time we asked a question. He would say, let me think about that for a second. The background ambient noise would cut off, and then cut back on a second later, and he'd start reading off stuff from the top Google result.
Posted this before, but it's always good for a revisit. Applicant: so, y'all do background checks, criminal history for this job, right? Me: yeah. Applicant: so, the court messed up, and when you run my background, it's not gonna say statutory, but it was totally just statutory. Dot.
Oh Jesus.
That'll be a yikes for me. Dog. I had someone come in who had just quit another job, and they bad-mouthed the previous boss throughout the entire interview. Like, we tried to steer her away and she went back to it. She clearly needed to unload, but an interview is not the place.
I was wondering about this. What if they ask you why are you leaving the previous company? How truthful should you be? At the company I am currently working, there has been couple of people who were interviewed and they were talking really bad stuff about their previous companies. Should they have just pretended that everything was fine?
This guy was applying to be a teacher's assistant whose main duty would be to help grade papers. He had to analyze an essay, 1 page. It took him over 2 hours. He handed the essay and there were 2 notes. He took off a comma and added a period. Well,
I scoured it for hours, but could not find a single error, aside from 2 minor punctuation errors. This essay, she is perfect. Quote.
He had Barack and Michelle Obama for his references, White House address and a phone number I doubt was theirs at all, and listed cure for cancer in his achievements. The team had a good laugh about it for a second and then threw out his resume. I regret not trying out those reference numbers though.
And listed cure for cancer in his achievements. What a country we live in. The guy that cures cancer can't find a job.
Not my story but an old professor of mine's. But it's too perfect not to use. A long time ago his department was looking to hire some kind of new junior assistant professor type. They had narrowed it down to 2 highly qualified guys, both fresh out of grad school. They knew they were going to hire one or the other. As a final step of the process they decided to take both of them out to dinner separately. The first guy is cordial throughout the whole thing. Seems to get along with everybody. Seems just fine. Then at the end of the meal he picks up his empty plate and licks the whole thing clean. Like, tongue flat against surface of the plate. Covering every inch of it until it's clean. In the middle of a nice restaurant. Then he just sets the plate down like it was the most normal thing in the world. Everyone just stares at him. And then awkwardly try to just wrap things up. Afterward they laugh about it to each other like WTF. What a bizarre and unnecessary way to throw away a near clinch on a good job opportunity. So then they take the second guy out. Almost just a formality at this point. Again, everything is fine. He's polite. Seems perfectly qualified. Seems to know the right things to say. Then at the very end they ask him if he had any questions for them. He pauses and thinks for a moment. Then goes, so what is the student-teacher dating policy? Afterward the other professors are sitting around together and one of them goes, well, looks like we're hiring the plate licker.
Please don't name your resume, job shit.
Did they save that as the file name and then attach the document to an email or something?
Telling me that they have syphilis. And they refuse to get treatment because they hate needles. Edit. Cool. My highest rated comment is about a guy the first didn't hire because he told me a lot of things including he had syphilis.
What question was this in response to? Exclamation mark.
I hope they like dying by insanity.
What the fuck? Exclamation mark. Gross.
I work at a hospital on a med-surg floor. We have a 2-part interview, one with the unit manager and one with either a nurse or an aide. We have a series of questions to ask based on a survey they fill out in the end of the application. She managed to make her way to me and this was her response to a question. If you saw a coworker doing something unethical, like stealing from a patient, what would you do? It depends if it was valuable or not. I mean, who hasn't stolen something before?
Do you guys drug test? Yes, we do. For like, all the drugs. Yes. Okay. Thank you for your time. And then he got up and left.
At least he was honest.
Being mean or condescending to my assistant.
I've been a receptionist before and my boss would always ask me how the applicant treated me.
This seems so common. Why would people do this? Exclamation mark.
Candidate arrived in rollerblades. Stayed in rollerblades the whole interview. He used the word blade instead of walk or go for the whole interview. Can't tell if I was being punked.
Some more details. He was in his early 20s. Resume was good but not great. The whole rollerblades thing wasn't a deal breaker. But it definitely didn't help. He insisted on sitting on the desk, rather than on a seat, so his rollerblade feet could just hang. I had to insist a couple more times throughout the interview for him to reluctantly take a seat. Which didn't help either.
What was he wearing otherwise? A suit?
As a female co-founder at a VR startup, my business partner and I did all the development, day-to-day, and management stuff. He was talking to a guy interested in being involved in our company and explained that the team also consists of myself and 2 male members of the company. When he mentioned my name amongst the other male names, this guy interrupted him, scoffed, and asked, "Okay, whose girlfriend is she?" That was the end of the conversation with that guy. Edit. Don't Google me at work.
Wait, are you the real ELA darling? I knew you were a gamer. I didn't know you were a coder too.
I'm a lobby guard, so I don't do the interviews. However, I have had interviewers ask me how the interviewee behaved in the lobby while waiting. Most just sit there twiddling their thumbs nervously. But 9/10 times those who ask me questions about the company and or the team they are interviewing for are hired. And 10 out of 10 times people who are genuinely rude to me are never hired.
I would have thought that this is common knowledge. Why on earth would you be rude to literally anyone where you're interviewing for a job? Assume that you're making an impression on everyone. What kind of questions would you recommend asking? Edit. All good pointers. Thanks all.
Job location. London candidate location. Denver candidate willing to relocate. No edit. Formatting.
I'm currently getting sent resumes from foreign nationals. Some who aren't authorized to work in the US. We are a small firm that does 95+% of our work with US GOV entities requiring a security clearance.
We had a guy come in for an interview, and he showed up a full 40 minutes prior to his scheduled interview. One room office shared by 3 people, so there's no good place for him to wait. I said you can go to the coffee shop next door and come back at the scheduled time. He said, "No, I'll just wait here, I have a phone call to make." He proceeds to have a very loud phone conversation in our one-room office. When it was finally time for his scheduled interview, he was still on the phone, and actually shushed me and said, "I'm on the phone." 10 minutes later he was ready to be interviewed. Not even sure why we proceeded with the interview. But it was over quickly and his resume was in the recycle before the door even closed.
I feel like I generally understand people, but then things like this happen and I'm just lost.
The applicant listed several non-profit community organizations he had served as a volunteer, only to discover that those entities didn't exist. Apparently he thought that being associated with charitable groups would strengthen his resume and that they'd never be contacted for verification.
You must be mistaken. My friend insisted that the Human Fund was a reputable charity when he donated to them in my name.
I once saw a resume that stated they were a valid Victorian. Either they were trying to say they were top of their class or that they were a genuine person from 19th century England. Neither of which were true.
Bon appetit.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, and above all, have an excellent day you marvelous people.